Stop chasing your friends, my nigga. Think for yourself, make your own plans, my nigga. You ain't
a check, check. Can I get a mic check? Microphone check. 1, 2. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, April the 10th. The 10th of the year 2024. We are back to the book club. I'm sorry I left you guys hanging the last week or so, but we are back on track. Life happens, guys. Life happens. Where we at? We're on page 108 where we left off. Again, we are here with Self-Made Man. Let me play the intro video because I'm off base first. So y'all give me a second. We'll run the intro, then we'll get to reading. Give me a second, guys.
Norah Mary Vincent was an American writer. She was a weekly columnist for the Los Angeles Times and a quarterly columnist on politics and culture for the national gay and lesbian news magazine, The Advocate. She was a columnist for The Village Voice and Salon.com. Her writing appeared in the New Republic, the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Post, and other periodicals. She gained particular attention in 2006 for her book, Self-Made Man, detailing her experiences when she lived as a man for 18 months. The experience led Vincent to have a nervous breakdown, and she fell into a deep depression. Norah was a radical feminist who believed that men had a much easier life than women. She set out to prove that hypothesis by disguising herself as a man for 2 years. In her book about the experience, she explains that she actually learned that men have it harder. In fact, the experience was so bad, she had to stop at 18 months because she was starting to hate women due to how badly the women treated her when they thought she was a man. Vincent also stated that she had gained more sympathy and understanding for men and the male condition. Men are suffering. They have different problems than the women have, but they don't have it better. They need our sympathy, they need our love, and they need each other more than anything else. They need to be together. Norah died by assisted suicide at a clinic in Switzerland on July 6, 2022, aged 53. Her death was not reported, however, until August 2022.
So that's what we're reading. I seen some people pop in the building. Kiki, do you love me? Are we riding? Say your name. Kiki, how you doing? How you doing? Thanks for coming through. Big Tex, what's popping? What's popping with you, my guy? What's happening? How y'all doing, man? Let's get to this reading, man. Y'all know I keep y'all for an hour. Thank y'all so much for y'all time and y'all support. If you feel this is valuable, if you like to contribute to the channel, super chats are welcomed, of course. Write those donations off at the end of the year, or you can shoot me a cash app to $RDubs if you're feeling frisky. Let's get into it, man. The people that come in will come in. The people that don't. First and foremost, shout out to the sponsor of the last stream, Empty Passengers. If y'all haven't checked that streamed out, check it out. It was very interesting. My boy Just Dario hit me with the $50 cash app after it was all said and done. Shout out to him and shout out to everybody who donated to the channel. I appreciate it. Got a giveaway coming up. This will be for subscribers that's in the building, so make sure y'all stay tuned. 40 boom. Yes, sir, it is. It is getting interesting, my guy. So let's get into it. Here we go. Where is we at? I want to make sure I have that plan just in case y'all feel like donating tonight. You got some lunch money you want to give away. Okay, we was on page 108, guys. In the middle of the page, the chapter we're on is Love. Black America, how you doing? Thanks for coming through. I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming through. So page 108 of the book, Self-Made Man by Norah Vincent. Let's get into it. Sasha and I struck up an email relationship after our first lousy date. Indeed, email is now central to dating. I made contact with almost all the women I dated via the internet, and we usually exchanged a number of emails before we ever met. Often, the process of measuring me against previous hurts began then, and did the expectation that I proved myself to be better than the rest. Correspondence was mandatory in most cases, even with the woman I met at speed dating events and followed up with later by email. Speed dating, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the practice, is a process by which singles can meet and have many dates with 10 or more members of the opposite sex in the space of an hour. One group, usually the women, sit at the tables. The men then rotate from one table to the next, spending a timed 5 minutes with each woman. Everyone is given a sheet of paper on which they mark a yes or a no next to the name of each person they meet, indicating whether or not they have any interest in seeing that person again. The organizers then match the yeses and provide email addresses to the interested parties. These women wanted to be wooed by language. They weren't going to meet a strange man without measuring him first. And they weren't going to waste a meal or even a cup of coffee on a suitor who couldn't be bothered to craft a few lines beforehand. It's weird how she phrased that, right? Going to waste a meal or even a cup of coffee like they were paying for it, right? Like they were the one putting forth the effort, right? So she has a, to me, in this portion, she has a skewed view still. You know what I mean? If that makes sense to everybody. I was happy to oblige. The seductive effect of a well-written letter, or better yet, a well-chosen poem, on a strange woman's mind was often strong and sometimes hilariously so, even to the women involved, who were quite aware and ready to laugh about the effects distracting missives could have on them. One date told me, long after she dated Ned and learned his secret, that a coworker reading one of Ned's emails over her shoulder had said, "Shit, he's sending you poems. You better fuck this man." Ned made an impression, not just because he gave these women at least a pale version of the reading material they seemed to crave, but because he did it so willingly. It was rare, most of them told me, for a man to write at such length, much less to write with consideration and investment. I found this to be true in my own experiences as a woman. For a little contrast, I went on a few dates with men as a woman during the course of my time as Ned. The men I met on the internet and then subsequently in person didn't require this epistolary preamble, nor did they offer it. They were eager to meet as soon as possible, usually I found, because they wanted to see what I look like. Their feelings or fantasies will be based on that far more than, or perhaps to the exclusion of, anything I might write to them. On dates with men, I felt physically appraised in a way that I never did by women. And while this made me more sympathetic to the suspicion that women were bringing to their dates with Ned, it had the opposite effect too. Somehow, men's seeming imposition of a superficial standard of beauty felt less intrusive, less harsh than the character appraisals of women. Sure, women noticed how Ned looked, or perhaps noted is more accurate, but it was the conversation they were after, the interaction, the proof of intangible worth behind beyond appishness. Writing well was the prerequisite, and that was where I saw the first pattern of judgment taking shape. Sometimes I was surprised at how early in the correspondence this process began. By way of describing my personality to one woman, I wrote that I like to try to dodge the mundane by shaking up the world around me, making purposeful but harmless faux pas just to see what would happen. Things like breaking into a silly dance in the middle of the supermarket or saying the unexpected, vaguely socially unacceptable thing at a dinner party just to poke a hole in the chatter. To this, she responded that her last boyfriend had enjoyed doing things like that, and one or two times it had ended up really hurting her. She said my propensities in this regard had given her serious pause. That was the end of that correspondence. So she listened to him and judged him on the things her last boyfriend did. What else is new? Another woman told me in her first email that she needed a confident man, but she felt there had to be a fine line drawn between being secure in himself and being arrogant. She said she drew that line with every man she met. This was a double bind I encountered often as Ned, and sometimes that made me wonder about how reasonable women's supposedly unmet emotional needs actually were. They wanted a man to be confident. They wanted in many ways to defer to him. I could feel that on many dates. The unspoken desire to be held up and led, whether in conversation or even in physical space. And at times, it made me feel quite small in my costume. like a young man must feel when he's just coming of age and he's suddenly expected to carry the world under his arm like a football. And some women did find Ned too small physically to be attractive. They wanted someone, they said, who could pin them to the bed, or, as one woman put it, someone who can drive the bus. Ned was too willowy for that and came up wanting. I felt this especially keenly on one of my earliest dates. Excuse me. Waiting for a woman at a fancy restaurant I'd chosen. I was sitting alone in one of those cavernous red leather booths that you see at the old world steakhouses, and I was holding the menu, which also happened to be red and enormous. And I felt absolutely ridiculous, like the painful geek in a teen movie who's trying to score with an older woman. I felt tiny and insignificant when held up against what I imagined to be this sophisticated woman's. She was a diplomat, expectations for a Cary Grant type who would know exactly what to do and say, and whose coat would be big enough to cover her. I suddenly understood from the inside why R. Crumb draws his women so big and his diminutive self begging at their heels or riding them around the room. I was so embarrassed. I almost got up and left rather than face the look of amused disappointment on that woman's face, a look that mercifully never materialized. We had a very pleasant, uneventful meal. Still, I never felt so inadequate on a date as I did sometimes as miniature Ned. Yet, as much as these women wanted a take control man, at the same time, they wanted a man who was vulnerable to them, a man who would show his colors and open his doors, someone expressive, intuitive, attuned. This I was in spades, and I always got points for it. But feeling the pressure to be that other world best riding colossus at the same time made me feel very sympathetic towards heterosexual men. Not only because living up to Caesar is an immensely heavy burden to bear, but because trying to be a sensitive new age guy at the same time is pretty, well, impossible. Peace, my good brother. How you doing, bro? If women are trapped by the whore Madonna complex, men are equally trapped by this warrior minstrel complex. What's more, while a man is expected to be modern, that is, to support feminism in all its particulars, to see and treat women as equals in every respect, he is, on the other hand, often still expected to be traditional at the same time, to treat a lady like a lady, to lead the way and pick up the check. Expectation, expectation, expectation. This was the leitmotif of Ned's dating life. Taking on the desirable manly persona or shrugging off its dreaded antithesis. Finding the right balance was maddening, and operating under the constant weight of so much political guilt was simply exhausting. Though, in the parlance of liberal politics, I had operated in my real life under the burden of being a doubly oppressed minority, a woman and a lesbian, and I had encountered the deprivations of that status. As a man, I operated under what I felt in these times to be the equally heavy burden of being a double majority, a white man. All right now. One woman whom I never did meet, but with whom I've had an intense week-long correspondence with as Ned, threw Ned into the male rogue basket as soon as I tried to warn her away from getting too emotionally involved. She assumed that my problems was fear of intimacy, but in my case, it was something else altogether. After only a week's worth of letters, I could see that this woman was making an emotional investment in Ned, and I began to feel uncomfortable with the deception. I too, perhaps in an all too girly fashion, had become emotionally involved, right? So she told the girl that she was talking with, don't get emotionally involved, but really she was doing it at the same time because she's a girl. That's crazy. I had grown to like this person and wanted to know her. Still, at first, I wasn't sure that I wanted to reveal my deception to her. So I was hopelessly vague, mostly indicating that she shouldn't become emotionally invested in something romantic developing between us. In response, she promptly accused me of being a married man who was lying just to get sex on the side, something she'd encountered before. She could tell, she said, by the characteristically devious quality of my prose, that I was trying to pull the other woman scenario over on her, and at that she broke off our correspondence. Not that I blamed her for wanting to ditch. It was a healthy response, but I was struck once again by the immediate impulse to lump me in with male cheaters, a breed whose scurvy ways are, apparently, immediately recognizable on paper, even in a lesbian. Sasha and I had our series of query-filled confessional emails exchanges as well. I wasn't playing a role on the page, or even in person, except in how I dressed and in my efforts to keep my voice in the lower portions of my register. I was just me. That was the point, after all, to be a real person, myself in all possible ways, culturally, a woman, but in disguise as a man. Just do what's happening. I didn't try to write or say the things I thought a man would write or say. I responded to her genuinely in every way except about my sex. Our time together lasted the longest, 3 weeks or so in all. We had only 3 dates during that time, but we wrote several times a day, sharing our thoughts about each other and our ideas about whatever came up. Naturally, during the course of all this, we talked about her past relationships with men, which, as she indicated at some length, had been less than satisfactory. I suggested that perhaps if men were so unsatisfying to her emotionally, she should consider dating a woman. Hey, sis, Miss Just Doing the building. Then I ventured she might find out that the fault was not in the sex. To this, she sent an unnecessarily sharp reply, something on the order of having about as much interest in lesbianism as in shooting heroin. She said she's strictly dickly. Pause. She had, by this time, about 2 dates and a week and a half into our correspondence, told me that she found Ned attractive, though she also made it clear that she was emotionally engaged elsewhere and was likely to remain so for a long time. So she was out dating, but still in love with somebody else. That never happens. This was the reason I had allowed our exchanges to go as far as they had. On the first date, she had made it clear that she was still in love with the married man and that whatever she and I could share would be circumscribed by that entanglement. My boy, are you doing wrong? She was looking for company, maybe a little male attention on the side to shore her up through her bad time, but she wasn't really single to speak of. Still, something had grown up between us in a short amount of time, and I decided that it shouldn't go any further. I would tell her the truth on the third date, which we were scheduled to have at the end of that week. I was curious to see what would happen to her supposed attraction for Ned when she learned that he was a woman. Would it evaporate? And if so, would that negate in her mind or even in reality the fact that it had ever been there in the first place? Is an attraction real if it is attached to something illusory or something that doesn't exist? Many wouldn't have argued that that is all love ever is, an attachment to something illusory. Lacan wrote that love is giving something you don't possess to someone who doesn't exist. Perhaps Ned was an object lesson in that principle, or at least in lust, if not love. Super facts, bro. But what if her attraction continued? And if it did, how would she deal with the knowledge that this thing she had so eschewed, lesbianism, was happening to her? She's not a lesbian, right? Your appearance is presenting as male. It's crazy how how she interprets that once she reveals the lie that the woman who was attracted to a man, feminine or whatever, right? Willowy, small in stature, skinny, right? When you reveal the lie to him that you're a woman, now she's a lesbian. Okay. Would she lash out in disgust? Or would she realize that perhaps those feelings that most of us are raised to reject and despise are not as alien and perverted as she had always deemed them to be? And that, in fact, they could come as naturally as other appetites when unfettered by convention. See, like, this gonna be bad for me to say.
Did you hear what I said?
Don't take this the wrong way, guys. But this is just the way I think. I can see why she deleted herself. Just give me a second, right? Give me a second. Not only like before, not only was she sexually confused, right? Now it's her choice. She could choose, hey, you lick what you want to lick, suck what you want to suck, right? Not only was she sexually confused, but after this, right? Everything she thought was right, everything she thought was right about men, right? She found out was a total lie. Her whole belief system was tore down, right? Her whole world was torn asunder once she went through this experiment. And I can imagine how difficult it was for her to try to get back to where she was after, because y'all know how it is once you woke, right? Not woke in the way they use it, but right. Once you got your eyes open as an adult, right? Once you see stuff, you can't unsee it, right? You try to reconcile it and go back to being ignorant, right? But you can't because your mind won't let you do it. Y'all know what I'm talking about? What's good with you, man? The flow god in the building. What's good with you, my boy? So solid in the building. Right. You picking up what I'm putting? Just do. You see what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying? Right. And just from that little paragraph when she talked about lesbianism, right, where she discussed the woman allowing lesbian into that, like even in her story, right? Even in her story, right, where she's supposed to be opening up and telling the truth about the stuff, right, that men go through, right? She's still in her mindset, right? While writing this book of truth, supposedly, right? While writing this paper of this book of truth, right? Still has the delusion that because she's a woman in man's clothes, even though she was presenting herself as a man, that women are attracted to women, not because they dress like a man, right? But because they're a lesbian. If that was the case, right, there would be no studs. Right? It's like when studs say stuff like, I dress like this because it's me. No, you dress like a man because women are attracted to men. Am I making sense? Y'all let me know now. I like that's how I think. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to show y'all how I think. Exactly, bro. And I don't know if y'all like if y'all like me, like right now in my life, right? I could spend a whole day thinking about some shit. You know what I'm saying? Right? If I got enough time to take off work, right, or if it's a Saturday and I ain't got nothing to do, I will sit and be thinking about some shit and going over the game plan in my head, right? And I can give away 3 or 4 hours. You know what I'm saying? So my life kind of stopped when I'm in a certain mode. You know what I mean? Up here, right? So I can kind of understand why she did what she did at this point. Okay. She's a confused person. We met for dinner at her house. During dinner, I told her right out in the blurted way our conversation tended to go, that there was something I wasn't telling her about myself and that I couldn't tell her what it was. I told her that if we were going to go to bed together, she would have to be willing to accept the untold thing and the physical constraints it required. She took this well. She was curious, not frightened. She didn't need to know, she said. We talked about other things. So y'all already know what that is. Right? She didn't care. Right? She wanted that thing, right? Oh, you a guy. I know you a guy, right? It can't be that bad, right? It can't be that bad. You know what I'm saying? There's some D involved. That's all I'm worried about. Right? We talked about other things over dessert and circle back to the topic of going to bed together or whatever approximated version of that I could do without divulging my secret. We talked about our letters and the subject of lesbianism came up again. Your response was pretty vehement, I said. You might have just said you weren't interested. Why heroin? Let me put it this way. I think of lesbianism like India. It's enough for me to see the special on PBS. I don't feel the need to go there. Makes sense, I agreed. The conversation moved on to something else and then back again to the prospect of sex. And my visible discomfort was skirting the edge of full disclosure, right? So this was that night. Y'all know what I'm saying? This was the night where you cash in, right? This was the night when he's supposed to hit that thing. She had asked if my secret was something physical. Hey, Diana, how you doing, my good sister? How you doing? Blessings to you, sis. The conversation moved on to something else and then back again to the prospect of sex. And my boy, right? And my visible discomfort with skirting the edge of full disclosure. I had told her as much as I would. She had asked if my secret was something physical, and I had told her it was. She reached her hands across the table and took my hands in hers. Would she see that my hands were small for a man's? I wondered. If she did, she didn't say anything. We decided to go into the bedroom. Once there, she lit several candles by the bed. I sat on the edge of the bed, which was low to the ground, and asked her to sit with her back to me on the floor. She did so, leaning against the mattress between my legs. I gathered her long hair in my hands and draped it over one shoulder, exposing one side of her neck. I eased down the V-neck of her sweater, exposing the shoulder, and traced her skin with my fingertips, behind the ear, along the hairline, the collarbone. I leaned down to kiss the places I touched. She moved in response, lolling her head to the side. She reached up behind her and placed her palm on my cheek. She would feel the stubble now for sure and know that it didn't feel like stubble should. The jig was probably up. Do you feel it? I asked. Yes. How does it feel? Soft, she said. She didn't seem alarmed or surprised. This was about as far as I was willing or able to take it. The makeup was smearing now for sure. So I took her hand away then and got up from the bed to move around to the front of her, to face her on the floor. Do you want me to show you or tell you? I said. Whichever you prefer. It took me longer than I thought it would to spit it out. I was holding her hands when I finally did. Dun, dun, dun. I'm a woman. She didn't pull her hands away. I went on immediately to fill the space. I told her about the book project and why I was doing it. Then I waited. She was still quiet. Then she said, "You're going to have to give me a few minutes to get used to this." We sat in silence. Clearly, whatever physical deformity she'd been expecting hadn't been femaleness. What's good, D? Fishing the fit in the building. How you doing, good bro? I'm not a transsexual, I added by the way of help. This is makeup and my tits are strapped down. I don't actually wear glasses either. I took them off. My glasses usually had a kind of reverse Clark Kent effect. Without them, people always felt I looked more like myself, whereas with them, Ned stepped out of the phone booth. The tortoiseshell plastic frames I've chosen helped to square my face and hid my eyes, which everyone found too soft for a man's. This and the knowledge that I was a woman helped shift the look long enough for her to see the woman underneath. Yes, I can see it now. Mr. Matthews, good evening, sir. She took up one of my hands, which she was still holding, and examined it. These aren't a man's wrist, she said, caressing them, or a man's hands, or a man's skin. She looked me over for a minute in the dim light, making out the feminine parts and nodding. I always thought you weren't very hairy for a man, she said. She laughed a little and said, "Well, now I can tell you that my nickname for you in the past 2 weeks has been my gay boyfriend. You set off my gaydar the first time I saw you. Your hair was too groomed and your shirt too pressed and your shoes too damn nice. Just Dario. Hey, let's give love to my man here. Shout out to Just Dario, man. I got to start giving respect where respect due, man. Sponsor of the last stream, Just Dario, with the $50 cash app. I appreciate you, bro, all the time. Just Dario, always showing love. Where is it? My gaydar and your shoes too nice, right? A lot of women had noticed and complimented me on my hair and my shoes. For Ned's dates, I groomed my hair to the last strand. The women I dated seemed to appreciate the effort quite a lot and seemed unduly glad to find a man with a manageable bush on his head. Right? Facts, bro. My shoes were just basic black leather loafers, but I wore them with black socks and jeans and a black button-down dress shirt, like some slob made over by the Fab Five on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. The trendy term metrosexual came up a lot in my company during my dating career as Ned. But it was on this point that I was sorely disabused of one of my preconceptions about heterosexual women and what they were really looking for in men. When I started the project, I had suspected that I would find hordes of women for whom Ned would be the ideal man. The ideal man being essentially a woman or a woman in a man's body. Hey, Rona, chill out. The crying game. Doom, 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 doom. Ned would be the ideal man. The ideal man being essentially a woman or a woman in a man's body. But I was wrong about this, baby. It wasn't that simple. Women's desires were stubbornly kaleidoscopic, and their more subtle proclivities even more uncategorizable. Sure, you can make generalizations about men and women, what they tended to do and want, buy and consume, but all of that was really just frosting. And it wasn't until you got down deep inside the individual that you began to see the contradictions emerge and announce themselves. The concept of either or isn't very helpful when you're trying to understand men and women. Y'all hear that, right? Right? Either or, right? I don't fly. I keep trying, man. She making sense. She be making sense at some points, and maybe because there's points I believe in, right? The concept of either or isn't very helpful when you're trying to understand men and women, because every time you try to boil them down to their tidy bits, their tidy habits, their anomalies poke through and leave you with a mess you can't write up very neatly in a conclusion, except to say that both are true and neither. Ned wasn't everybody's type by a long shot. Sure, some women, like Sasha, as it turned out, still wanted to go to bed with him once they knew he wasn't a guy. But plenty of others didn't. They were just flat out heterosexuals, tried and true. As one date, Anna explained it to me once I told her I was a woman. I was not immediately sexually attracted to Ned. I thought him good looking and likable, and the date was so very enjoyable and commanded a repeat performance. And the writing, the writing was what got me off. But in the end, Ned himself did not elicit an immediate visceral sexual response from me. Ned was too slight for me, too metrosexual. I would never have guessed in a million years that you were not a boy. But I like boys that weigh 200 pounds. And yes, I find them emotionally disappointing, especially in bed. But the physical strength, the roughness, I find erotic. And I do not prefer sex otherwise. Marcus, what up? Sasha and I spent hours that night talking about the book, why I was doing it, and how fascinated she was by what she learned about herself. Sasha was very interested in the implications of the experiment. She was curious about her lesbian tendencies or lack thereof. She wasn't in the least frightened or threatened by the switch or her attraction to Ned and her ongoing attraction to me. She was extremely pleased to have happened upon an experience that had shaken up the norm. Sasha and I went to bed together. And obviously, Sasha had to thereby revise her hard ideas about lesbianism and her desire to go there. Yet she did so with stunning alacrity. What? With stunning alacrity. I don't know what that word is. I'll have to look it up. Alacrity for someone who I'm fairly certain was not a closeted lesbian all along, or even a genuine bisexual. In our weird stilted exchanges, we had connected mentally in some way. Maybe I'd come to admire the adventurer and even the oddball in her. Maybe she just desperately needed a good friend. There could be 1,000 reasons, good or bad, but I think none of them had much of anything to do with sex. And this, I'll maintain in an entirely unscientific manner, is a stubbornly female tendency, right? All right. So, do you guys understand what she was referring to in this point, right? Of how women tend, some women, not all, right? Hey, thank you, hey. Right? It's not that she wasn't familiar, right? Or even that she wasn't interested, right? A lot of women are curious, right? So they do that stuff with us. I keep trying to tell y'all, man, watch your girls' girlfriends, man. Watch your girls' girlfriends. My wife didn't used to believe me till she started peeping seeing, right? A lot of women, right? A lot of women dip and dab in that stuff. I'm just being honest. I ain't trying to throw no slight at nobody. I ain't trying to throw no slight at nobody. Hold up, y'all. Hold up. Shout out to Kiki. Kiki with the $10 cash app. Thank you, baby. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Thanks so much, KK. Thank you. All right. Facts, bro. Right? Hey, man, it's an art within itself. It's an art. Listening is an art, bro. Okay, so let's get it going. For most women, sex is an epiphenomenon. The sting that is issues from the engine. And the cold is mental. It's, do you make me laugh? Do you make me think? Do you talk to me? It's not, are you handsome? Are you rich and accomplished and well hung? I suppose more often than you might think. It's not even, are you male or female? It's really just, are you there and do you get me? But that's the quantum paradox of sexuality right there. Because just as soon as I say that, just as soon as I say that 3 of the women I dated and revealed myself to, 3 heterosexual women, wanted to or did sleep with me once they knew that I was a woman. I remember that one of those 3 women, Anna, didn't sleep with me because I didn't weigh 200 pounds. She struggled to plumb that conundrum as hard as anyone. We went back and forth on it, trying to understand the nature of the attraction we both felt. An attraction that was physical, but physical because it had first been mental. Anna was by far the best date I had as Ned. Given what I described thus far, this may not sound like the choicest of compliments, but I mean it as one. She was a joy and proof that real chemistry could exist between 2 people from the instant they meet. Of course, she was also proof that chemistry was just that, particles mixing and sparking a buzz on the brain, but it wasn't a good predictor of fit or anything else, for that matter, beyond itself. It had nothing whatsoever to do with what 2 people would want from each other or what would work logistically when the high wore off. You could be extremely unaware of who or what you were to each other, or even, in our case, whether you were man or woman, gay or straight, and it could still be there between you, plain and undeniable. But momentous as it sometimes felt, maybe in the end it didn't mean anything at all. I ain't gonna say nothing. We met for dinner at a cheap Chinese place I knew. All these dates were breaking me financially. And based on past experience, I was hoping it would be a short evening. But the minute Anna sat down, I was so immediately at ease with her that I wish I had taken her to a place where the prices weren't even on the menu. The kind of place where blind daters who click get slowly soused on top shelf martinis until they're canoodling on the bar stools and feeding each other's oysters by the end of the evening. By the end of the evening, we were canoodling at the bar at a place down the street. I asked her if I could touch her hand. She nodded and smiled drowsily, faintly, pityingly, faintly, nurturingly, the way she might have looked at a lot of imploring men, placing her hand on the bar, palm up between us. And there it was, the thing sought, the simple favor granted, and a mountainous relief contained in it. I held it and kissed her fingers. That was all. Nothing serious. We talked mostly, and thereafter we wrote a lot of emails back and forth until I finally told her the truth. And then nothing changed and everything changed. I met her again later as myself, and the thing between us was still there, but she was a little afraid of it by then, uncomfortable with it and anything but the mind, for reasons I both understood and respected. That was the beauty of the experiment. It was different for everyone. The third straight girl who still wanted to keep seeing Ned, even after she knew that he was a woman, was the only girl I succeeded in picking up in public. Sally worked behind the counter in an ice cream parlor. I was there buying ice cream, and while she was scooping my cookies and cream, you should have knew she was a girl then, right? Only girls order cookies and cream ice cream, or guys that's with a girl ordering her cookies and cream ice cream. What is wrong with you people? Don't you see the signs? Pay attention to the signs, guys. I told her that I really liked her glasses. It was true, the kind of thing I would have said as myself, but also the kind of thing that would be taken much more to heart by a straight woman when I said it as Ned. She was affable and direct. She responded to Ned's compliment with flirtatious thanks and a story about how she picked her frames out of the bargain basket at the optician. I gave her my phone number on a napkin and asked her to call. Probably not the manly thing to do, but I thought it was the polite thing to do. My feminine empathy knew how awkward it could be to refuse someone your number, yet how much more awkward it could be to give it to him and then have to play phone dodge for the next 2 weeks until he either dropped the chase or turned stalker. She called the next day. Her voice on the phone was tentative. She'd never done this before, she said. No one had ever just asked her out on the spot. She was floating on the attention. She would be mad later, I thought, and she'd have every right to be. Sally and I went out 3 times together, 3 chatty dates on which we talked about nothing much at all. There wasn't much to say. She was 35 and still living at home, still working in the ice cream shop she worked in as a teenager. She'd been engaged, but had broken it off a year prior, or he had, or they let it atrophy until someone moved out. It was hard to tell. She hadn't been on a date since, but she wasn't bitter, or not so as you could tell. She coasted over things and smiled and laughed at Ned's jokes. She didn't intimidate him. She knew enough not to. There were always girls like that. I'd known them all my life. The ones who didn't challenge a boy, or later, even a man, because he was really still a boy, and the slightest sign of backbone would chase him away. In high school, that's what I learned as a girl. Make light, hide your intelligence. But having felt so small and intimidated with women as Ned, and that despite being a grown woman, Sally's coetishness was a mercy to me, a small kindness and a comfort, even if it was mostly in that. Sally liked Ned, it seemed. She flirted, not just with her laughter and attentiveness, but with her hands. She touched me often on the arm or the shoulder as we spoke. Mid conversation, she reached across the table to straighten the rumpled collar on my jacket. We kept right on talking as if it hadn't happened. At the end of the 3rd date, I revealed myself. Dun dun dun. At first, she was stunned, still smiling and sort of laughing, wheels not turning visibly. Then she said she'd known something was off, but she hadn't been able to put a finger on it. Maybe some part of me knew, she said. I don't know. You made so much eye contact. You listened so well. You weren't hairy. I'm not sure. She said she wasn't angry, but she didn't say much of anything else. But then hours later, she wrote me an email to say that she was actually kind of angry. She wanted to know if I only asked her out in order to do research for the book. I tried to soften this, but it was true. I asked her to come by my place the next day to talk. I wasn't dressed as Ned. She showed up with a bottle of wine. She sat on the couch sipping it, not saying anything. I asked her what she wanted. She looked at me, seemingly undeterred by the change in my appearance. I guess to keep seeing you, she said. This surprised me. But you're not a lesbian, are you? I asked. I don't know, she said. I've never really been that fond of penises. I tried to get her to talk more about this, but she wouldn't, except to say that she could never tell her family about any of this, at least not the lesbian part. Salute, Corey Joe. At least not the lesbian part. She'd be too ashamed, she said, to ever tell anyone she might be gay. Maybe you're not, I said. And if you are, you won't always feel this way. Yeah, I guess, she said, and got up to go. We agreed to meet again, but we never got it together. I stopped by the shop to see her once a few weeks later, and she seemed embarrassed. She said she was seeing a guy and it was going well. I was happy for her. The last time I saw her there, while getting a cone with friends, she pretended not to see me. I wasn't surprised. She'd come around past that nice pretense to letting me know how she felt, if only by giving me the silent treatment. She had her angers aplenty, but like me and so many of the women I knew, she seemed to have trouble showing them, choosing instead to suppress them or pretend that everything was fine, to make things run smoothly while she boiled underneath. Right? Still, feminism had cracked the curse in some of us, giving us the right to be mad and the temperament to say it. And I met those women too. This is so sad. My worst date by far was with a woman I met for coffee in New York. We had very little correspondence beforehand, just meager getting to know you kind of stuff. Like many of the others, it was hard to pin her down for a date, but finally she agreed. She was an attractive woman, a graduate student who had done her undergraduate work at an Ivy League school and had spent time thereafter at the Sorbonne. You could tell she was used to talking down to people, assuming they hadn't read the things she had. She was one of those polyglot Euro snobs who lived in various countries around the world and now considered herself to be above the cretinous American company she was at present obliged to keep. She had lived in the Middle East as a child, so I started the conversation on what I thought was a topical note, asking about her thoughts on the veiling of women. I imagine, I said, that having lived in both worlds, she might have some interesting insights on the matter. She leaped on the word interesting. I don't know what you mean by interesting. Westerners don't understand the first thing about it. They think it's oppressive and backward. But what's really backward is the fact that in the year 2003, Congress can pass a law outlawing late-term abortions. Here it was, the abortion test. This had come up on other dates. Several women went out of their way, it seemed, to stake out their ground on it, presumably as a means of testing my feminist credentials. One woman mentioned it in passing on a date while talking about someone she knew who was against abortion. That's interesting, I interjected. That's the first time I've ever heard anyone be honest about the profile position and call it what it is. She nodded, but a few minutes later, when she had cause to mention the pro-life position, I said profile, about the pro-life position and call it what it is. She nodded, but a few minutes later, when she had cause to mention the pro-life position again, she made a point of using the popular propagandic term anti-choice instead. The lines were drawn. I didn't take the bait then, and I didn't take it with the Eurosnob either, preferring not to get into a political argument. Besides, I didn't want to interrupt this woman's hostility trajectory. I wanted to see how far it went. I wanted to see if, as with Sasha, I could find out what was behind it. Get her to talk about the dynamic that was surfacing between us and why it was there. I was, after all, doing research. And if I was going to take abuse, I wanted to search it for what it could teach me. This she didn't like any more than she had liked my use of the benign qualifier, interesting. She began critiquing my conversational style as too meta. Apparently, I didn't ask the right questions. I was far too serious, something she had found to be true of other men she dated. She had said that she was interested in Italo Calvino, So I mentioned the concepts of lightness as he defined it, asking if this was what she was looking for in people. To this, she responded with what for her was probably enthusiasm, agreeing that yes, that was the quality she was looking for exactly. Here is Calvino's partial definition. To cut off Medusa's head without being turned to stone, Perseus support himself on the very lightest of things, the winds and the clouds, and fixes the clouds, and fixes his gaze upon what can be revealed only by indirect vision, an image caught in a mirror. I am immediately tempted to see this myth as an allegory on the poet's relationship to the world, a lesson in the method to follow when writing. This, as it happens, is a perfect description of how our date made me feel. I may not have been quite Persian enough to sue her, but she definitely turned me to stone. In passing, much later in this conversation, I mentioned the difference in our ages. She was 30, I was 35. No sooner were the words out my mouth than she railed, "Oh, please. You're not going to try to tell me that a man's 35 is equal to a woman's 35. It's more akin to a woman's 23." At that point, I was, for the one and only time on my dating career as Ned, sorely tempting to strip naked and shout, "Look, honey, I'm a chick too, and a dyke to boot. So drop the Shulamith Firestone routine." I outgrew that when I was 23. And if you ever hope to land a man who isn't castrato, you better start practicing a little more of that Calvino you're preaching. But I just fell silent and shrugged. I deserved some abuse, even if Ned didn't. I never had a second date with the Euro snob. Better just to fish somewhere else. So I did. And that was when I met Anna for dinner. For me, Ned's encounter with Anna and the crux of my dating time as Ned was all about that moment at the bar. The moment Anna gave Ned her hand and the way she treated him when she did it. With such conscious, poised magnanimity, granted access with the best possible grace. No woman I met as Ned had managed it nearly so well. It was a lot to manage. And if you've never been sexually attracted to women, you will never quite understand the monumental power of female sexuality, except by proxy or in theory, nor will you quite know the immense advantage it gives us over men. As a lesbian, I knew something of this, but it is different between two women, more an engagement of equals, an exchange of something shared. As a man, I learned much more, and I learned it, I think, from an unexpectedly disadvantaged point of view. Let's see if she gets it right, fellas. Let's see if she gets it right. It sounds like she got the concept. Let's see if she gets it right. The women's movement was in part about redressing feelings of powerlessness, physical powerlessness, institutional powerlessness, and the fear and rage that came of it. Rape is still a statistic women live by. And as we make our way in the world, we slink around corners, we maneuver our sexuality with salty care, losing just enough to be desired, but not too much to be unsafe. And all the while, we envy the seeming and volatile. And all the while, we envy the seemingly invulnerability of males and dread its implacable underpinnings. We think we're working from the underside up. But if Ned's experience is anything to go by, that's not how it seems to the boys. Dating women as a man was a lesson in female power, and it made me, of all things, into a momentary misogynist, which I suppose was the best indicator that my experiment had worked. I saw my own sex from the other side, and I disliked women irrationally for a while because of it. I dislike their superiority, their accusatory smiles, their entitlement to choose or dash me with the fingertip, and execution so lazy, so effortless. It makes the defeats and even the successes unbearably, it made the defeats and even the successes unbearably humiliating. Typical male power feels by comparison like a blunt instrument. It salvos and field strategies laughably remedial next to the damage a woman can do with a single cutting word. No. Champion Heart, how you doing, champ? Let's dive in this to a little bit, man. Let's dive into this a little bit, right? This is what I speak about the ability to choose, right? The woman has, yes, we pursue you, right? A man will pursue you. It's a job's man to pursue you, but a woman can end all that like this, right? We're not talking about the men that they try to say is the majority, right? The dudes who don't respect when a woman tells them, "Hey, you know what? I don't want to talk to you," right? The dudes who who just keep coming, the assholes, the idiots, right? The bullies. We're not talking most men, right? Most men, when they're pursuing a woman, right, understand and respect her stance as a woman. This art, it all ends with that word, tap, chat. So this argument and this premise that women have that someone made them do it is a lie. It's disingenuous at best and a lie at worst. Everybody that's out here and you moving and you had more than one partner, right? The person you fell in love with when you was in high school, but you've been out here at these clubs and these bars and you socializing with other men and women. You have friends, you have family that you talk about this stuff. Everybody understands how the game is played. Why is it still this extreme example of what men is making women do when it comes to the sexual marketplace? It's a lie. Okay? It's a lie. Stop lying. Sex is most powerful in the mind. And to men, in the mind, women have a lot of power, not only to arouse, but to give worth, self-worth, meaning, initiation, sustenance, everything. Seeing this more clearly through my experience, I began to wonder whether the most extreme men resort to violence with women because they think that's all they have. Their one pathetic advantage over all she seems to hold above them. I make no excuses for this. There are none. But as a man, I felt vaguely attuned to this mindset or its possibility. I did not inhibit it, but I thought I saw how rejection might get twisted beyond recognition in the mind of a discarded male, where misogyny and ultimately rape may be a vicious attempt to take what cannot be taken because it has not been bestowed. Okay. Some women seem so superior when you see them through the eyes of an ordinary man that now, looking back on that feeling as a female, the very idea of ramming your dick into a woman to avenge yourself or claim her suddenly seems as absurdly out of the scale and ineffectual as a pygmy poking his finger at the moon. In the sex clubs I visited and in the dating I did, I inhabited an outlook imposed on me from the outside by culture, by other women and other men. And I glimpsed this deeply disturbing connection between violence and sex and women and self-worth. The hallmarks of male powerlessness, the helpless, worshipful lust, and the murderous ire that may come from the same lack. The same lackey status that can turn on in an instant. Want me, it all seems to say. Love me, desire me, choose me. I need you. You ignore me, You disdain me. You destroy me. I hate you. Having seen it, I am more afraid than ever of male minds. And oddly, I feel more powerless than ever walking in the world among them, even though I know this isn't fair. Men are not all the same. And Ned, like every man and no man, was not all men and never could be. Yes, yet it seems true to say that we women have far more power than we know. And because of it, even with our fears, our parries, and our wits about us, we are in even more danger than we know or dare contemplate. But there were other reasons that my time dating as Ned made me angry with women. Of course, I fell into the same trap they did. When I was Ned, women became a subspecies to blame, just as for these women, men had become the adversary in the wrong. I did what they did and saw how almost inescapable it was when you were opposites, even though, of course, I wasn't. The brain drops data into categories, but I was in both categories at once. I was angry because I wanted them to behave more reasonably. I was angry because I wanted myself to conclude more reasonably. Dating these women as a woman in disguise was like looking at a dozen different versions of yourself and faulting everyone for its specific female faults and knowing them to be yours as well. Wearing the costume of a man, I could slip this noose for a second and say, that's not me. That's women, capital W, feminism, capital F. I dislike these women and women in general because we fall prey, as we must, to self interest and chauvinism. I became a misogynist for a time because I expected better of women. Because in the beginning, I expected nothing of men. Didn't I tell y'all? Anything they did was gravy because, like a lot of women, deep down, I didn't think men were capable of much. In that regard, I was every bit as bad as my dates. Boy, that man good, bro. hmm Ned could feel good about himself and his buddies because he was simple and nothing much was expected. Now, like his bowling buddies, he could do nothing but lift on his good deeds, which sometimes amounted to little more than warm handshakes and the merest pinch of self-awareness for which he could pat himself soundly on the back. But women were supposed to fly already. And I held it harshly against them that they were as small and shitty and short-sighted as everybody else, including me. Ned saw that. And then I saw Ned seeing it. And then I saw myself. I guess that was the fascination of Ned. He was a mirror and a window and a prism all at the same time. But the truth was, for all the anger I felt flowing in my direction, anger directed at the abstraction called men, I was most surprised to find nestled inside the confines of female heterosexuality a deep love and genuine attraction for real men, not for women in men's bodies, as the prejudicial me had thought, not even just for the metrosexual, though he has his audience, but for brawny, hairy, smelly, stalwart, manly men, bald men, men with bellies, men who could fix things, and yes, men who like sports and pound away in the bedroom. Men whom women love for being men with all the qualities that testosterone and the patriarchy had given them, and whom I have come to appreciate for those very same qualities. However infuriating at times, I still find them. And I came largely to forgive women and myself for our own all too apparent shortcomings, our emotional arrogance, our lack of perspective, our often unreasonable needs and projections and blames, our failures, like men, to manage to acknowledge the imbalance on our own side of the equation. Dating women was the hardest thing I had to do as Ned. Even when the women liked me and I liked them, I had never felt more vulnerable to total strangers, never more socially defenseless than in my clanking suit of borrowed armor. But then, I guess maybe that's one of the secrets of manhood that no man tells if he can help it. Every man's armor is borrowed and 10 sizes too big, and beneath it, he's naked and insecure and hoping you won't see. That's the end of the chapter. Yeah, I believe she did. Black. She dated men. Black America. She dated men, right? So ain't no way in the world she didn't dated a bunch of dudes and ain't somebody slid her. She went to college. You know what I'm saying? Somebody slid up in that thing. Somebody slid up in that thing. Excuse me. Jeez. Man, I had some of the worst tacos I ever had for dinner, man. I couldn't even finish that. And it got me belching like I ate the whole thing. I ate one taco and it just was awful. Shout out to y'all, man. We got a live stream coming up, man. It will be an open panel. I'm gonna see if I can give y'all a preview. Yeah, a quick preview. It's a quick preview of what we got going on tomorrow. We got a live stream coming up tomorrow. Where is that? Trigger warning. Y'all know how we do tomorrow. Trigger warning. Trigger warning tomorrow, guys. Trigger warning. Yes, sir. All right, over here. Trigger warning tomorrow. Thank you, my sister. I appreciate you. Love you much. Yeah, I had it's gonna be tomorrow around 8-ish tap. I had the thumbnail and stuff done tomorrow. I was messing around today. I had to clean up for my baby get home. You know what I'm saying? She getting her back adjusted, so she's not the best. So, but she can't move like she used. I finally went and paid a chiropractor. We paid a chiropractor to get her back right. So she was sore. So we ordered tacos. So I had to get up clean up for my baby get home. But tomorrow, y'all done heard me say it a bunch of times. Tomorrow we will talk about it and break it down as long as we have to. Just get ready for the thumbnail tomorrow around. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Tomorrow around 2. I should be off work early tomorrow. So thank y'all so much. Again, thank you so much for the cash apps. Kiki with the cash app show. Do appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m.-ish, y'all. Come on in and talk about it. I need ladies and me. I appreciate you, big dog. Make sure y'all come and check this one. Gonna be wild, man. It's gonna be wild. We're gonna talk about it. Prove me wrong. Try your best to prove me wrong. I ain't saying I ain't never wrong. I'm just saying you're gonna have to prove me wrong. Right? So that's all we got, man. Y'all know what it is, man. We out of here. Thank y'all so much. We'll be back next week with some more book club. We almost through with this book, I think. Where we at? Yeah, we're about halfway through this one. I'm gonna need some suggestions for the next book club. So make sure y'all get on y'all job. Any books y'all want to hear, get recorded. And that's all I got, man. I love you guys. Thanks so much for supporting me. I appreciate y'all. Y'all know who it is.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is.
Y'all have a great night. Love those who love you. Say your prayers. Get up, make your bed, gentlemen. Take care of yourselves. Peace, y'all.
Man, till you stop chasing your friends, my nigga. Think for yourself, make your own plans, my nigga. You ain't a man till you stop chasing your friends, my nigga. Think for yourself, make your own plans, my nigga. I'd be lying if I said I ain't understand, my nigga. Cause who you gon' follow when the leaders all get swallowed? You ain't a man till you stop chasing your friends, my nigga. Think for yourself, make your own plans, my nigga. You ain't a man till you stop chasing your friends, my nigga. For yourself, make your own plans, my nigga. You ain't a man till you stop chasing your friends, my nigga. Think for yourself, make your own plans, my nigga. I'd be lying if I said I ain't understand, my nigga. Cause who you gon' follow when the leaders all get swallowed?
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is.